Today is November 7th, 2022. We're here today with Dale Diermyer and doing a veteran interview with him. He is one of the veteran volunteers for our UPMC Family Hospice. Welcome, Dale, and I'm hoping you're interested and excited as we are about doing this interview. So I'm going to start off with some questions, and then we can just end up talking about your life, the life of Dale Diermyer. So Dale, tell me, when did you actually join the service? How old were you?
I was 20 years old, actually. I had graduated high school and was working in a job in the Western New York area and just felt that it was going nowhere and decided that I needed to follow up on something that I had thought about for many years.
Mm-hmm. Do a lot of people in your family join the military? Is that something that a military family or?
My granddad was in World War I, and I had an uncle who was in the Navy during the Second World War.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to basic training or boot camp, and what was it like?
Basic training was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, and it was to say the least, an interesting endeavor. One of those things for a kid who grew up raised by grandparents was really kind of a change of life for me. I learned an awful lot there about what a young boy goes away and ends up turning into a man looks like.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And did you serve in combat at all, Dale?
I did not. However, I was in the United Kingdom, England specifically, Royal Air Force Base, Bentwaters, when the British went to the Falkland Islands, and we basically guarded and served their home country while they were away fighting in the Falkland Islands.
Dale, what did you do in the military? What was your job?
Well, initially, when I went in, I started as a aircraft maintenance technician, what most of the guys around the flight line would simply call a crew chief. Personally, I actually worked in the repair and reclamation shop, which included many things, including crash recovery, wheel and tire replacement, any kind of mechanical things that had to do with flaps or ailerons or a whole lot of other aircraft control systems. Later on, I attempted to become a logistics person. I say attempted because although I was working in that job, the Air Force aircraft maintenance specialty was shall we say, a critical career field, and was not allowed to actually officially transfer into that, but that's what I did for probably the last 5 or 6 years of my Air Force career.
How long were you in the military?
I was on active duty for 12 years.
Wow. Do you remember what it was like coming home and trying to become a civilian again?
I do to a point. I was fortunate in the fact that not actually serving in combat, I don't think transition was quite as bad for me or as difficult for me as it is for some of the guys that come home that were actually in some of those combat zones. Certainly there's a certain amount of transition that's necessary, but it didn't really personally affect me, I don't think, all that much.
Do you have a really good or fun memory about your time in the service? You must have some.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There was many. I think the one that I find really most enjoyable, or that I talk about most, was in 1976. The Air Force was doing a NATO exercise in Bardufoss, Norway, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in that exercise. It was called, the code name for that, which I'm sure I can use at this point in time, was called Sinbag, C-I-N-B-A-G, which was simply the first letter of each country that was involved. It was Canada, Italy, Norway, Britain, America, and Germany. And what they did is we went there and we were put into teams of one person from each of the countries, and we had to learn to actually work together, overcoming language barriers and the ways other folks did things, and all kinds of very interesting things. if it wouldn't have been for the Canadians, we probably would have starved to death because of being as cold as it was up there, and not really knowing what it was that we knew. So it was a great time. It was a great learning experience, but we also had a lot of fun doing it.
Would you do it all over again if you could? Would you join the military again?
Without question. Without question. There were many times, even after separation, you asked a little earlier whether or not there was any difficulty in transition. Trust me, when I first came home and first got back into the civilian way of life and found out how civilian things worked, I thought, maybe it wasn't so bad. I could have possibly stayed a little bit longer, because when we were told to do something there, we just flat did it. We didn't question it. We didn't get involved in, well, why do we do it this way or why do we do it that way? We were given, so to speak, marching orders, although in the Air Force, fortunately, we didn't march much. We just did what we were supposed to do.
What would you tell a young person today if they asked you whether they should join the service? What advice would you give them?
Oh, that's simple. I tell them to join the Air Force. But whatever branch it is, I would say that it's really something good for all young people to do. Again, I know myself, being raised by grandparents and having my grandfather pass away when I was fairly young, at about 16, and Graham having health issues. I was really kind of left to my own devices when I was 17 or 18 years old, and I may have been heading down the wrong path. And I think fortunately for me, by being able to join the military and getting some true guidance, that it really made the world a difference. And there's so many great opportunities today with the things that they're involved with, the technology, and now the new aerospace command that's involved, and so many things. I'm sure that there's something there for everybody, regardless what the branch.
And Dale, what is one lesson that you learned from being in the military that you'll never forget that might have affected your whole life?
Well, once again, it's in a word or a few words. It's keep the options on your side. I had a situation when I was, again, first in, still new, still wanting to be just a little bit rebellious. Had a senior NCO that, shall we say, protected me from some really, really serious issues by making sure that I understood that what he said was what he meant, and it made the world a difference. So I think just basically pay attention, do what you're told.
How has the military, Dale, or how, as what you perceived being the military, how it is now and how it was then, how has it changed? Have you noticed anything that might have changed in the military over the years?
Well, I think one of the things, to be totally frank and blunt about it, is I think the kids going in today are smarter today than they ever were. There's so much more technology involved today. I do know that some of the creature comforts that they have are a lot nicer than what we have, so we've improved that through the government, I think, as well, through the Air Force anyway. And I just think that it's one of those deals where, like anything else, the evolution of the military has shown that we can actually do our job and still give those folks that are there the opportunity to have some things that are just a little bit better in life for them.
Dale, what do you think civilians can learn from veterans or even active military servicemen and women? What are some lessons that you think civilians could learn?
Well, it all comes back to that same thing. We all have a boss. We all have somebody that we have to answer to. Listen, follow directions, do what it is that you're supposed to do. And on the other side of that, if you are a supervisor or a boss, listen to your people, because they oftentimes have good ideas.
Okay. Dale, Veterans Day is coming up, and this will be my last question for you, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to just talk and share with Veterans Day coming up. What is it that you would like people to know about Veterans Day or about yourself or about being in the service? What would you like us to know, as civilians?
Well, I think as much as anything else, Veterans Day just seems to be one of those times that I'd like to see folks just sit back and reflect and understand what it is that so many men and women have done. So much that has gone on for the country, and just take an opportunity to thank those who have done so much. Again, I was fortunate. I was in during a peacetime for the most part, had a really good experience with it, but there's so many that have come home that are struggling every day with 22 veterans every day committing suicide and just so many different things. Just take a moment to reach out and thank them for what they have done.
Well, we're going to reach out and say thank you, Dale. Thank you for sharing all this with us this morning. Ashley, who's sitting here with me, do you have any questions or thoughts you'd like to share with Dale or ask Dale?
I think my question would just be, just to kind of round this out, hearing about, your experience and everything, would be, now that you are working with hospice and honoring veterans at end of life, how has that been for you, on the other end of the spectrum, kind of seeing how that comes, if you could share anything about that?
Sure. It's been a great opportunity. Actually, just for a little bit of background, I had some orthopedic surgery previously and considered going into the volunteer area in the orthopedic area. I was working at that time for the organization that I volunteer for now, and saw one day that there was a piece in our hospital newsletter looking for veteran volunteers, so I decided to go ahead and check it out, and went through the orientation and realized right then and there that this was where I was supposed to be. It's one of those opportunities to kind of just give back, to have an opportunity to go and sit and continue to learn, continue to serve. So many times when we do the veterans pinnings and the program that we do there, it just gives you that opportunity to realize just how lucky maybe I was not to have to serve in some of the situations that they were. And it gives some of the folks that we go out and meet with or visit with an opportunity to talk to another vet. I always say when we go to these things that when we get two veterans together, we're going to start telling lies that nobody else would ever hear. So it really just kind of gives you an opportunity to get out there and continue to give back and enjoy the camaraderie and the knowledge of knowing that what you were doing was something that was going to probably help others while still being very, very personally satisfying.
Wonderful. And that's for the We Honor Veterans program. That's the partnership with National Hospice and Palliative Care and the Veterans Affairs. I think one final question would just be, for me, would be, how do you think your time being enlisted has shaped your identity as far as being an adult? And just like you said, you were a young man, you were, kind of on the precipice of becoming an adult, and just where you are now. How has that shaped your identity?
I think it was really it's pretty simple, really. It taught me over the years. Of course, sometimes it took some of us a little longer than others to learn this, but over the years, it taught us that you learned to lead one moment and follow the next. And you learn to think before you act, and you learn to act decisively when you do act. So it was just one of those things that I know coming home and working in the job that I was in, having folks working for folks and then having folks work for me later years, that I always wanted to be a team member, not necessarily a boss. A team leader, fine, that was perfect, but I wanted to be part of that team as well. I never asked anyone to do anything that I couldn't do myself.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Dale. I appreciate that you spending your morning with us today, and look forward to hearing from you at other times in the future as well. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.